Some of you are carrying financial pressure so quietly that nobody around you can tell. You smile, you work, you keep showing up. But in the private hours, your mind keeps doing the same math. How far the paycheck can stretch, what bill will be late, what surprise expense will knock you off balance again. And the heavier it gets, the more tempting it becomes to believe a lie that God's provision is for other people and you're stuck fighting your way through scarcity with your own strength. But Joseph's story refuses to let that lie live. Joseph walked through betrayal, loss, and years where nothing looked fair. Yet God didn't just preserve him, God trained him. Joseph learned how to think in seasons, how to stay steady when emotions tried to steer, and how to manage what God placed in his hands without panic and without pride. When the years of abundance arrived, Joseph didn't treat it like a party. He treated it like a responsibility. He didn't spend the harvest, he protected it. He didn't wait for trouble to start planning, he prepared while peace was still available. And when the famine finally came, the storehouse became a lifeline, not just for Joseph, but for families, cities, and nations. Even Jacob's household was spared because one man chose to steward wisely before the crisis ever arrived. That's why this message matters tonight. Because saving in the Bible is not fear. Saving is wisdom with faith. It's a quiet decision that says, God, everything you give me has purpose. I won't waste what you entrusted. I won't let impulse eat my future. I won't let stress push me into shortcuts that cost my peace. Joseph shows us that God can give his people practical strategy without compromising trust, and he can build stability in the middle of uncertainty. So stay with me. We're going to walk through 7 saving principles from Joseph, simple, biblical, and powerful. And as we do, I'm believing Jesus will do more than teach you money habits. I'm believing he will calm your spirit, sharpen your judgment, and put strength back into your inner life so you can lead your home with clarity, discipline, and peace. And before we close, I will pray a covering over your finances, your decisions, and your future in the name of Jesus. Number 1. Save when it's easy. Because seasons change, Joseph didn't wait until the famine arrived to start acting wise. He paid attention while the sun was still shining. Pharaoh's dreams weren't just strange nighttime images. They were a warning from God about how life moves in seasons. 7 years of abundance were coming, and then 7 years of severe famine. And Joseph understood something many people miss. Abundance is not permission to relax. Abundance is a window to prepare. That principle is deeply biblical. The Lord is not only the God of miracles, he is the God of wisdom. And wisdom says, don't treat today's strength like it will automatically last tomorrow. Joseph's leadership wasn't built on panic. It was built on foresight. He didn't store grain because he doubted God. He stored grain because he honored what God revealed. That's what real stewardship looks like. You receive the provision with gratitude, and you also respect the responsibility attached to it. Some of you are in a season right now where it's not famine, but it's not overflow either, just enough to get by. Still, this principle applies because easy doesn't always mean rich. Sometimes easy simply means your bills are paid, your work is stable, and you have a little breathing room. And in that breathing room, the flesh wants to spend, upgrade, reward itself, and ignore the future. But Joseph teaches us to do something holier. To set aside even a portion, small, consistent, faithful. Because seasons change. Saving done God's way is not hoarding. It's not greed. It's not living in fear. It's building a buffer so you don't collapse when life hits. It's creating space so you don't have to make desperate decisions under pressure. It's a quiet act of obedience that says, Lord, I will not be careless with what you gave me. And when you practice this, you begin to break the cycle of crisis living where every unexpected expense feels like the end of the world. Joseph didn't just predict the famine, he prepared for it. And God used that preparation to protect people. In your life, your saving may be the very thing God uses to protect your household from anxiety, conflict, and rushed choices. The goal isn't to worship money. The goal is to steward peace. Number 2, treat saving like a system, not a mood. Joseph didn't build Egypt's survival plan on motivation. He didn't say, let's try to save more this year and hope everyone felt inspired. He built a system, organized, measurable, consistent. Grain was collected during the abundant years, stored in cities, and managed with structure. That's why it worked. Because a crisis doesn't care about your intentions. Only what was actually stored could feed people when the famine arrived. This is where many believers get stuck. They love the idea of saving, but they treat it like a feeling. If the month goes well, they save. If stress rises, they stop. If they feel discouraged, they spend. If they feel confident, they plan. But saving can't be built on moods, because moods change daily. Joseph's example calls you into something stronger. Discipline that doesn't require a perfect day to function. A system is simply a decision you don't have to argue with every week. It's a pattern that runs even when you're tired. It's a first-thing habit, not a leftover habit. Because if saving only happens when there's extra at the end, then saving will almost never happen. Life will always find something to consume extra. But when saving is part of the structure, like Joseph's storehouses, provision becomes protected before it can leak away. And notice this. Joseph didn't just store grain in one giant pile. He stored it with order. That speaks to how God works. God is not the author of confusion. He brings clarity, wisdom, and order to what he blesses. So if you want to honor the Lord with your finances, don't only pray for increase, pray for order. Pray for a stable mind. Pray for self-control. Pray for the strength to keep a simple system running, even when the enemy tries to drag you back into impulsive living. Because here's what a system does. It turns "I hope" into "I know." It turns "maybe I can" into "this is who I am now." Joseph didn't just survive because he had a gift. He survived because he built something that could carry a nation through a storm. And the same God who gave Joseph wisdom can help you build a small, faithful system that carries your home through pressure with more peace, more stability, and more confidence in his care. Number 3, save on purpose. Attach every dollar to assignment. Joseph didn't store grain as a vague idea. He didn't collect it because saving feels responsible. He saved with a clear assignment: preserve life when the land goes dry, keep families from collapsing, and protect the future God was shaping through covenant promises. In other words, Joseph's saving had meaning. It wasn't random. It wasn't emotional. It was intentional. That's one of the strongest reasons people struggle to save today. Money without a mission becomes money that leaks. If your saving goal is blurry, your spending will always feel more urgent. But when your saving has purpose, when it's tied to something real, your no becomes easier, because it's not just denial, it's devotion to the future. This is a deeply spiritual principle. God often entrusts more to people who can steward with clarity. Joseph could handle abundance because he understood what it was for. He didn't treat increase like permission to drift. He treated it like a calling, and that calling gave him focus when everyone else would have been tempted to celebrate the moment and forget the next season. So let this land gently. Saving isn't just about numbers. It's about direction. When you attach purpose to what you set aside, you stop feeling like saving is punishment. You begin to see it as protection. You're not missing out. You're building capacity. You're saying, Lord, I want a storehouse in my life so that my home doesn't live on the edge. And yes, purpose can be simple. Purpose can be peace. Purpose can be no more panic when the car breaks down. Purpose can be a buffer so my marriage isn't strained by every surprise. Purpose can be helping family without collapsing myself. Purpose can be giving generously without fear. Joseph teaches you to stop saving as an afterthought and start saving like a steward, because when you give your money an assignment, it stops acting like a runaway servant and starts becoming a tool. Number 4, resist lifestyle inflation. Don't spend the harvest. The years of abundance in Egypt could have turned into one long celebration. New pleasures, bigger appetites, a culture of more. And if Joseph had followed that spirit, the famine would have destroyed everyone. But Joseph did something rare. He refused to let abundance become permission to be careless. He expanded the storehouse, not the lifestyle. This is where so many people lose ground. Even good people, praying people, faithful people. The moment income rises, spending rises with it. The moment pressure lifts, discipline relaxes. And slowly, without even noticing, the harvest gets eaten, not by one big mistake, but by 1,000 little upgrades that feel deserved. A little more here, a little more there. And then the next hard season hits, and there's no grain stored, no margin, no breathing room. Joseph's wisdom confronts that pattern with love. He shows us that increase is a test of character, not just a gift. When God brings relief, the question becomes, will you build your foundation or will you build your appetite? Because if you train your life to consume every blessing, you end up trapped, always needing the next increase just to keep up with the life you created. And if this message speaks to your heart, comment amen below and let others see your faith shine today. Notice how strong Joseph had to be internally. He had authority, influence, and access to abundance, yet he chose restraint. That restraint wasn't misery, it was maturity. It wasn't fear, it was wisdom. It wasn't God won't provide, it was God is providing and I will steward it well. So when you feel the pull to immediately upgrade everything the moment you have more, pause and ask, is this helping my future or feeding my moment? Joseph teaches you to honor the harvest by protecting it. Because the goal isn't to look wealthy, the goal is to stay steady. The goal is to have margin when life shakes. The goal is to be able to breathe, pray, and make decisions from peace, not from panic. And when you resist lifestyle inflation, something powerful happens. You regain control. You stop living like your money is the boss. You stop chasing status to cover insecurity. You start building a life that can endure storms, and that endurance becomes a testimony. Just like Joseph's storehouses became a rescue in famine, your discipline today can become your stability tomorrow. Number 5. Save with integrity. No compromise. No hidden doors. Joseph's saving wasn't just smart. It was clean. It was honest. It was steady in the light. Think about the pressure he carried. He was managing resources for an entire nation. He had influence, access, and the kind of authority that can quietly tempt a person to cut corners and justify it. Most people don't fall into major compromise all at once. They take a small shortcut, then another, then they tell themselves it's not that serious. But Joseph's story shows a different kind of strength. He was the same man in private as he was in public. That matters because integrity doesn't only keep your reputation safe, it protects your peace. When you save money by cheating, you don't gain security. You gain anxiety. When you win by deception, you don't gain freedom. You gain fear of exposure. And in the long run, compromise always costs more than it pays. Joseph understood something spiritual. God can bless work that is faithful, but compromise invites trouble into the house. So when we talk about saving with integrity, we're talking about more than avoiding crime. We're talking about refusing the subtle traps, dishonest reports, shady deals, hidden spending, secret debt, manipulation, gambling with money you can't lose, or trying to impress people while your foundation is cracking. Integrity means you don't need a double life to survive. You can look your family in the eyes. You can sleep at night. You can pray with confidence because there's nothing hidden that you're protecting. Joseph's life is proof that God can lift someone up without them turning corrupt. He went from prison to palace and didn't lose his soul. That's what I want for you. Provision that doesn't poison you. Increase that doesn't pull you away from Jesus. A storehouse built on righteousness, not shortcuts. And this is also about how you handle what you already have. Sometimes the temptation isn't to steal. Sometimes the temptation is to give up and say, why be careful? It's not like it matters. But integrity says, it matters because God sees. It matters because my home deserves stability. It matters because my future is holy. When your saving is rooted in integrity, your heart stays clean, your mind stays clear, and your life stays aligned with the peace of Christ. Number 6, store what God gives you. Multiply what you keep. Joseph didn't just save. He managed the saving. He organized it, protected it, tracked it, and stored it in a way that could actually serve people later. Because there's a difference between having resources and having readiness. Grain scattered in the field doesn't help anyone in famine. Grain gathered and stored becomes life. This is where a lot of people lose blessings. God provides, but the provision leaks through chaos. Money comes in, but there's no plan, no structure, no protection. so it disappears. It gets eaten by impulse, by disorganization, by small leaks that never get addressed. And then people conclude God isn't providing when the real issue is that the provision isn't being stored. Joseph teaches a simple truth. What you don't manage, you will lose. Not because God is cruel, but because life is real. Expenses happen. Temptations show up. Emergencies hit. And if you don't build a storehouse, your increase will feel like it never arrived. Storing what God gives you is an act of honor. It says, Lord, I respect this provision. I won't treat it casually. And when you respect what's in your hand, you prepare yourself for more. God often multiplies through stewardship. He multiplies through order. He multiplies through the quiet, boring faithfulness of doing the same right thing again and again. Joseph stored grain in cities because it was practical and accessible. In your life, that same wisdom looks like keeping things simple and protected. It looks like deciding where your grain goes before the month begins. It looks like making room for stability before you make room for wants. It looks like learning to keep what you have instead of constantly restarting from zero. And there's a deeper spiritual layer here, too. Storing isn't only financial, it's mental and spiritual. Joseph stored wisdom in his heart. He stored humility. He stored discipline. That's why he didn't break under pressure. Some of you don't just need money saved, you need strength saved, peace saved, self-control saved. Because when the famine season comes, when stress hits, when fear rises, it's what you stored in your inner life that carries you. So ask yourself tonight, am I honoring what God gives me? Or am I letting it slip away? Because Joseph shows us that the storehouse isn't built in one dramatic moment. It's built by consistent stewardship, small decisions that protect the future. And when you learn to store what God gives you, you stop living in constant recovery mode. You start living from stability. And that stability becomes a platform for God to bless others through you. Number 7. Saving is not just for you, it's for legacy. Unpeopled Joseph's storehouses were never meant to be a private trophy. They were built for a public rescue. When the famine struck, the grain didn't just keep one household comfortable, it kept entire communities alive. And that's the final principle that lifts this message higher than money habits. Biblical saving is not selfish. It's love with wisdom. It's protection with purpose. It's stewardship that thinks beyond today. Joseph's obedience didn't only affect his personal future, it preserved the covenant family line. It protected Jacob's household when they had nowhere else to go. And it positioned Joseph to become a blessing even to the people who once harmed him. That's a holy kind of maturity when God's provision in your life becomes a channel of mercy instead of a wall of pride. Some of you have been thinking, if I can just get stable, I'll finally be okay. And yes, God cares about your stability. But Joseph shows us that stability is not the finish line. Stability is a foundation for service. It's what allows you to help without collapsing. It allows you to give without fear. It allows you to respond to need with prayerful wisdom instead of panic. This is why saving matters spiritually. Because when your life has margin, you stop making desperate choices. You stop living at the edge of anxiety. You can breathe. You can listen to God. You can be led by the Spirit instead of driven by pressure. And that's when you become a safe place for others. Your children, your spouse, your family, even people God brings into your path unexpectedly. And hear this carefully. Legacy is not only what you leave behind when you die. Legacy is what your discipline builds while you're still living. Your legacy is the peace your home feels. It's the wisdom your children watch. It's the stability that breaks generational cycles. Some families pass down fear and debt in constant survival mode. But in Jesus' name, your house can pass down something different. Faith, order, generosity, and calm strength. Joseph saved grain, but what he really stored was future hope. He stored a path through the storm. And if God could use Joseph's wisdom to preserve nations, He can use your stewardship, your quiet consistency, your integrity, your discipline to preserve your home and bless others through you. Conclusion. Joseph's story teaches us that God doesn't only rescue people from storms. He trains people before storms. The same Lord who gave Joseph insight, discipline, and courage can give you wisdom for this season too. And tonight, these principles aren't meant to condemn you. They're meant to strengthen you. Save when it's easy, because seasons change. Build a system, not a mood. Attach every dollar to assignment. Resist lifestyle inflation, and don't spend the harvest. Save with integrity, no compromise, and no hidden doors. Store what God gives you and multiply what you keep. And remember that saving is not only for your comfort, it's for legacy, for people, and for the bigger story God is writing through your life. You may not be in a palace like Joseph. You may feel like you're in a hidden season, a waiting season, even a pressured season. But Joseph proves that God can shape a steward anywhere: prison, silence, uncertainty, and delay. And when the moment comes, the wisdom you practiced in secret becomes the stability that carries you in public. So don't despise small beginnings. Don't underestimate simple discipline. The Lord can use one faithful person to change the future of an entire household. And I believe Jesus is building that kind of strength in you: steady hands, a clear mind, a peaceful heart, and a life that can stand through famine and still become a blessing. Before you go, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And join us next time as we uncover another powerful truth from God's Word.